Obviously we do.
Okay, we're live.
Okay, good evening and good evening, council and staff. This electronic meeting agenda is available on the town's website at greaternapanee.com and is being streamed to the public on Greater Napanee's YouTube channel. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Council's Rules of Procedure Bylaw and Code of Conduct, and other pertinent legislation apply to these electronic proceedings as if they were in-person meetings. I will do a roll call of the members of council, and then the clerk will follow it up with a statement of the members of town council that are with us. Johnson, Ward 5.
I'm here.
Okay. McCormack, Ward 1. Norrie, Ward 4.
I'm here.
Canal, Ward 3.
I'm here.
Richardson, Ward 2.
Ward 2 present. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Present.
Present. We could have the clerk read out the members of staff that are with us this evening, please.
We have Raymond Callery, the CAO. Paul Dauber is the treasurer. Brant Zoderberg is general manager, community and corporate services. Rob Serson is general manager of emergency services, fire chief. Peter Dafo, who's general manager of infrastructure services. Todd Harvey is director of utilities. Brianna Clement, who's the community engagement clerk, and Charles McDonald, who's director of operational audits. I believe that's everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Susan. If any member of council's connection to the meeting is interrupted, then the mayor will call recess of the meeting until the member can reconnect either by internet or telephone. If the member is not available to reconnect in 5 minutes, the meeting will resume. For voting purposes, I will ask the question when called, all those in favor, and then all those opposed, and I will announce that the resolution is either carried unanimously or carried. With that, I will call the meeting to order. We have an amendment for the agenda, which would include statements by members, which will be 4.10, and in closed session, an agenda item added 5.1, in closed session, a matter regarding identifiable individuals. So with that, I would call for an adoption of the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Canal, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Items for discussion. I need to recommend. We have a recommendation that we adopt the minutes as presented from the meeting of June the 9th. Moved by Councillor McCormack, seconded by Deputy Mayor Kaiser. All in favor of that motion if there are no questions or statements? Yeah, Councillor Johnson, I can't see you, so I'm assuming that you're with us.
Motion approved.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It says
Okay, I'm trying to fix the video.
Okay, so carried unanimously. Thank you. 4.2 CAO licensing agreement for mobile eating establishment. You have a recommendation before you. And is Charlie speaking to this or is Ray speaking to this? It says CAO. So Mr. McDonald.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Spester, and good evening, members of council. I believe council is aware of the two operators that are interested in starting up two different operations, obviously, some mobile eating establishments. So what's before you this evening are two draft agreements, and I'll certainly answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of the report that Mr. McDonald has put before us? Seeing none, you have a recommendation that you receive it for information, and further that the corporation of the town of Greater Napanee enter into a licensing agreement with Jerry Zebarth, I don't want to murder that one, to operate a mobile eating establishment from a property known municipally as Conservation Park for the 2020 season. And further, that the corporation of the town of Greater Napanee enter into a licensing agreement with Susan Ratty to operate a mobile eating establishment from a property known municipally as Springside Park for the 2020 season. And further, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the said licensing agreements on behalf of the town. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any further comments or questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. That was easy. Community and Corporate Services, amendment to patio license at Lofanale 25 Dundas Street East. Mr. Zetterberg, did you wish to speak to this? Or was someone going to speak to it with the amendment to his allow? Oh, I'm sorry, Susan, are you speaking to that? I'm sorry.
I can speak to it if council has any questions. The restaurant owner is able to accommodate more tables than the license that was issued at the previous council meeting. All the physical distancing and public health requirements are being met. So it's just a request to amend the patio license.
Okay, so we have a recommendation that council receive for information the correspondence from Lofanale dated June 17th, and further that council authorize an amendment to the outdoor patio license issued June 12th, 2020 to the Lofanale at 25 Dundas Street East to permit a maximum of 8 tables and 32 chairs on the outdoor patio. Comments or questions or a motion, either way? I'll take the motion.
Staff recommendation.
Okay, yeah. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Pennell. Councillor Johnson, you have a question or a comment?
Just a quick question. Is one of the reasons they want extra tables to allow them enough time to clean the tables properly in between seating clients? Do you know that?
Susan?
No, I don't know that, but they are able to physically distance the tables and have the proper protocols in place for that many tables.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? They've really got it set up nicely. I'm quite happy with the way that it looks. So we have a motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Financial Services 2020 Capital Financial Update. Paul, are you on here with us? Oh, there you
I'm Mayor Semester.
Did you wish to go through this with council, Paul, or do you want questions?
Sure. I would be open to questions. The purpose of this report is a follow-up from the last council meeting when we brought an update forward to look at the projections towards the end of the year in relation to COVID-19. This one kind of further goes on by presenting the projects that had been approved to continue on. There was about $1 million worth of projects deferred, but these are the projects that are continuing on. Just to give you a quick description, the budget figures and the actuals, and then the notes just describing where we are so the council's aware of where each one of these projects is currently at. Now, there is one slight correction that I would go forward with. I'm happy to go through line by line in detail, but I'm not sure if that's what council wants at this time. But I would point to the very last page of the report. It's a 4-page report, and on page 4, this talks about 2020 expenses and projects that have carried over from previous years. Right in the middle, there's the Meach Road project. The 2020 expenses, $21,868. It does give a bit of an update as to where we are in that project. Now, the last line was the budget was 1.3 million and the total expenses to date are 1.7 million. I did find out, did a little more digging in between the time of the writing of this report and now, and found out that originally the budget was 1.3 million. On May 14th, 2019, there was a report that came forward to award the contract, and resolution 2819 was passed to increase that budget line to 1.55 million. And then the budget sheets hadn't quite been updated, but council had passed that. There had been previous meetings, and I don't have a date on it, in which about $140,000 was included for land purchases. This is a road that's been widened, and for those sections, there was land purchases from the owners, and that had been set about 140,000. And that's still ongoing. And then as part of the 2020 surface treatment program, there's $200,000 identified there. So in actuality, the budget for that whole project is $1.89 million. Current is 1.7. So it still has just under $160,000 in that. So I just didn't want council to get the impression that that was more than $400,000 over budget. As I said, I would be happy to go through this line by line or to let council ask questions as they wish.
Thank you, Paul. Questions from council to our treasurer, Councillor McCormack?
Under environmental, I'd just like to be educated. What's the purpose or the use for the vehicle for the water treatment plant? What kind of vehicle is it?
I believe that one was a pickup truck, and that was part of the capital fleet that was brought forward on December 19th of the council meeting as one of the vehicles that was identified in the capital fleet replacement program to be pulled out of rotation due to age and wear and tear.
I just want to know how the vehicle is used. Like what's the purpose?
If I could call on Mr. Defoe, he would have a little bit more information than me on that.
Peter, do you want to come on to answer that? Or Todd? Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The vehicle at the water treatment plant is used for the operator to go from the water treatment plant facility to the booster stations located on McCabe Street and on Brandon Road, to go to various sampling locations, to come to 45 Commercial Court, just generally to move around the distribution system and our other facilities. Pick up parts as well.
So is this a pickup truck?
Yes, it is. It's a half-ton.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions either on the vehicle or to Paul on the capital update? If not, then we have, I just need a motion to receive for information the capital financial update report. Thank you, Paul. Motion moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Norrie. No further comments or questions. All in favor of the motion? None opposed, carried unanimously. Thank you. Financial services tax sale update. Paul, you're back on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to give a little bit of background onto this report. Cleaning up the tax sales was one of the items that was put on, that was mentioned during my hiring the contract purpose for contract purposes, but also put on my work schedule for 2020. The tax clerk and I had met and started having devising a plan on how to deal with the tax sales going forward. At that time, we decided to make it a priority to look at the 3-year and the properties that were 3 years or more in arrears, get those properties listed for tax sale, and then go back to the second phase to do the 2 years. it was decided at that point to get going with the budget, get the interim tax billing out, and then to come back with that. And we had estimated about beginning of March start for that. There were 9 properties that needed immediate attention, so those were put into tax sale back in at the end of 2019. Unfortunately, the pandemic happened. The order came through, and the provincial emergency declaration by the province saw regulation 7220 order to the Tax Sale Act, which basically freezes the clock for the tax sale process, retroactive back to March 16th for all activities for those tax sales. So what that means is, like, for the properties that have already been registered for tax sale, for example, if one was to come up for tax sale, let's say September 1st, the emergency was to last for 6 months, then we would not be looking at actually conducting the tax sale on September 1st. That would be moved the 6 months for the length of the state of emergency. So then we'd be looking at March 1st. So those 9 properties that were listed, they're still in tax sale, but they're on hold. As well, we're not able to register any property. So that's all been put on the back burner. I just wanted to give that quick update just to let council know that that's where we're at. This report really speaks to the number of properties that are into the 3rd year of arrears, which is 148. If we take into consideration the properties that are in 2-year, that would add another 64 for a total of 212. We do have a plan going forward as far as how to deal with them, but unfortunately we've been stalled because of the current situation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Yeah, I'll go to Councillor Pennell first, and then Councillor McCormack.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Paul, did I hear you say that once the state of emergency is lifted by the provincial government, that with the 9 properties that we've already have filed, would it take another 6 months before we could react on that?
That would be correct. That was an example. If the emergency was the last 6 months, then any extension would be 6 months past. If it was 5 months, then it would be 5 months, just according to the measures or the time frame of the state of emergency. Now, we don't go back at all. Those 9 properties are not unlisted. They're still listed. It's just a delay for the time of the state of emergency for the year-long process for tax sale.
Just to follow up on that, sorry, I'm not quite following along here for some reason. If the state of emergency was lifted July 1st, would this sale of the property start July 1st, or is there a delay?
No, as we had that meeting back in November 25th with the tax sale process, just kind of an education system. So I'll just kind of defer back to there. The tax sale process is once a property becomes 2 years in arrears, that's when you're able to list a property for tax sale. Mm-hmm. At that time that it's listed, there's a 1-year period before it actually becomes eligible for the actual tax sale. So that gives the property owner a year to make arrangements to pay the property or to sell the property, or however they choose to deal with that. That's a provincial legislated time frame. So what that does, it takes a shifting of that year from the beginning to the end, and it just shifts it along for the time frame that that the emergency is in play. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense, Councillor Pennell.
Oh, okay, just sorry for clarification too. I must not be getting something here. The 9 properties that we have that you've identified here, they're over 2 years, and then the 3rd year, as you mentioned, so the 1 year of extra time. So they've all hit the 3 years, the 2 years for eligibility, and then the 1 year for the time for the owner to get caught up. and we're only on hold for these 9 properties because of the pandemic. So therefore, if the pandemic was lifted July 1st, then we would be okay on those 9 properties. We wouldn't have to wait any longer.
No, we would have to, wherever they are in the process, that some of them might be a couple months into the process. Let's just say 3 months into the process, the pandemic comes on. It freezes at that 3 months. So what ends up happening is if the pandemic lasts for 6 months, instead of that year process, it ends up becoming a year and a half. So we advance the ending of the tax sale process, the conclusion of the tax sale process, by the length of the time that the emergency declaration is in place. So if it lasted 6 months, let's just say the pandemic happened the same day that we registered for tax sale. Normally it would be a year. It was registered on the same day. There's 6 months of a pandemic. It would end up being a year and a half before you could actually sell the property. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yes, I think I was thinking that the 9 properties have met all the qualifications and we were ready to go on it, but I guess they're at different stages of, okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
That was my misunderstanding. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Councilor McCormack?
Thank you, Worship. Do we know if, let's take these 148 properties, are these all individual ownerships, or would some of these properties have the same owner in 1 or 2 or 3 instances?
It's Councilor McCormack through the mayor. It is possible that there is one owner for multiple properties on some of them. I haven't done an analysis to look at that, but it is very possible.
Is that something we could ask for down the road?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilor Richardson?
Thank you, Your Worship. On the surface of this, it sounds pretty bad. If there's 148 properties in our community that have been delinquent in taxes for in excess of 3 years, it's safe to assume probably some of them are farther ahead than that. They may be delinquent for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. We don't know. On the surface, this doesn't sound very good. However, is there a process, and I'll ask the question, is there a process for once we get to the 3-year period as to which properties we decide to list and which properties we don't? Do we go by date? So the most delinquent properties are the ones that we do first, or do we go, how is it established, I guess?
We're just setting up the processes and going forward at the town of Greater Napanee. What I've done in the past and plan on implementing would be to basically take it in stages of four sets of listings per year. So a quarterly analysis that would take those properties, take them by age, and then list those properties about four times a year. At this point, we'll probably be looking at one large push for all the 3-year properties, and then coming back and rounding up the last 64 that are 2 years. And then once we're past that point, so it's a large project to get it going, to get it moving, to deal with it. And then once we're past that point of the 212 going through, we will look at that point of a quarterly update within finance, a meeting to look at how we're going to proceed with those properties that will be approaching that point, to provide notification to those landowners, but also the ones that are past that point to go ahead and start with the listing process.
Okay, and I think you've probably answered my next question, because I was just curious as to how many of these processes, and I know each one of them is going to be different than the other because they've all got different personalities, I guess is the best way to put it. But how many of these realistically can we get cleaned up or cleared or established over the course of a calendar year, I guess?
At this point, with the number of them and the direction that I have as far as my work schedule goes, was to have them cleaned up in 2020. Obviously, the pandemic brings a little bit of brings some complications in there. However, if we were to pull in some resources and divert some staff attention within the finance department, it could be reasonable that we could get them listed by the end of the year. And then they would be hopefully dealt with at the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022, because there's that year-long process that it goes through. However, if we do list them all, basically, and kind of a one big push forward, we'd be, there is a cost to listing the properties. We recoup it when we actually do the sale, if it gets to that point. And in my experience, I think I've listed 50 properties before, and only one actually came to tax sale. I had another chunk where we listed a couple dozen and none came. So the good portion of them end up cleaning up from various sources. But for the ones that do end up following through with that, if we were to list them all in succession, we would be advancing about $425,000 as far as cash flow. As far as an income statement goes, that wouldn't affect us because that would be recoverable fees. But from a cash flow perspective, we would be putting out just in and around the 400 or just slightly more $1,000 into the tax sale process that we would recoup later. So we would have a little slightly tighter cash flow situation in that.
Terry, did you have one more? And then I'll go.
I just want to clarify. So we're talking about the whole 148, cleaning them up in the next year or so, or is that just the 9 that we've got listed?
No, that would be the 212. That would be the 3-year and the 2-year.
Okay. No, that's great. I didn't know what the 2 years ones, and be quite honest with you, I'm more concerned about the 3 years plus than the 2-year one at this point. But
and the distinction between the two is that it used to be provincially mandated that you couldn't proceed with tax sale until the 3-year, and then a couple of years ago the legislation changed to allow for 2 years, just due to the large amount of properties across Ontario that were in default.
Councillor McCormack.
Just a question, thank you, Worship, about the town's position with regards to the monies that are collected through a tax sale. If a property is sold for 100,000 and the person that owned the property owes the CRA $120,000, do we get our tax money first and then they come and take the rest, or what's the position there?
In that situation, we would get our money first, and it would be buyer beware, basically, to put it bluntly, that they would have to do the due diligence. The people who are bidding on it would have to do their due diligence to find out about any liens, especially if you're talking about federal, provincial. They do carry forward. So the new owner would be responsible for those liens, or to try and negotiate with the various government bodies. But the town would get their money. Or the other way is if there was a property, say, with $20,000 outstanding that is owed to the town at the point of the tax sale, and the bid was $50,000. The town would keep $20,000 and $30,000 would go into the courts. It used to be that we could apply and get that $30,000 back after a year if nobody applied for it, but the federal government has now changed the standing of that, and the federal government now would get that $30,000.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to apologize for everyone for entering with such a mess behind me. I sincerely apologize. I didn't mean to do that. With regards to the discussion on tax sales, Paul, you have a very solid plan for moving forward, and it will be up to our Premier to release a state of emergency before we can actually continue the process. Am I right on that?
That is correct, through the mayor. That's correct. There is a little bit of preliminary work that staff could do in the meantime. And we've got our tax due date coming up later this week. Once that's settled down, then we can look at doing a little bit of the preliminary work. Obviously, we can't do it all. because we're not allowed to actually continue the process on, but we can at least get a little bit of the preliminary work started to make it a little bit easier as we go forward. There is, it's not just taking a listing and sending it off to the company that looks after the tax sales for us, but there is quite a bit of paperwork on each and every individual property to forward. So it would be quite a large undertaking.
Any further questions or statements from council to Paul? Okay, Paul, I do have a few. So we've got 148 properties that are more than 3 years in arrears. I just want to make sure that the listening public is understanding a lot of this as well. How many tax bills do we send out? How many tax bills do we mail out to people? How many properties?
That would be just a little bit under 7,500.
Okay. And I understand why we're concentrating on the 3 years instead of the 2 years. Are they mostly commercial or residential?
In this situation, they're mostly residential. There is a little bit of commercial and industrial, but for the most part, it's residential.
Okay. Are most of them vacant land, or are they land with buildings of any kind?
I believe, you know what? I did not have a look at that. I could provide council with an update.
That'd be fine with that. What happens when an estate is involved, or worse than that, when someone dies intestate? Do we have any of those that are sitting right now?
Again, Madam Mayor, I didn't do an analysis as far as that. I don't even think I would have the information to put that into.
I know that we have had them in the past. So once we register a tax sale certificate, we've met everything. Does the whole amount have to be paid to rescue the land, or is there negotiation for a payment schedule? And if there is a negotiation for a payment schedule after the tax sale certificate has been registered, does that come before council for approval?
I'll have to answer that in several parts, Madam Mayor. So
yes, several parts, so that's fair.
Yes, once the tax certificate has been issued, legislation says that the whole amount that's owing has to be paid, no partial payments. However, municipalities do have the option to negotiate, to put the tax sale on hold, not cancel it, put it on hold, and to negotiate. The same changes that brought the requirements from the 3-year down to the 2-year also changed who's able to decide that. So in the past, it had to, by legislation, come before council. That change also allowed certain municipalities or towns to opt to let the treasurer have the decision-making powers for that. So in our case, we haven't passed a resolution for which way we'd like to go. So at this point, yes, it can come to council. It doesn't have to come to council, and that would really be a council decision as to whether council wants to deal with that or not. We have, as staff, one of the first things that we did as part of the process to start the cleanup was to put together a finance agreement for those situations, which outlines how much is owing, what the payment schedule it is. I've got an Excel sheet done up that would I can actually populate to show when they would be caught up. And what I mean by caught up is to have their outstanding paid off while maintaining their current taxes due. And I usually look at a fairly short timeline in catching up. And then it also states that at that point, if the payment agreement is not kept, is not honored, if payments are missed without a formal process of notification, then it automatically goes back into tax sale without notification to the owner.
Okay, so what's the success rate? And this is, I don't know whether you can really answer this easily. You miss a tax bill. I think you have whatever color the tax bills are, and then within a certain period of time, if you've missed an installment or if you've missed partial payment, then you get something that is pink, a pink slip. What's the success rate when those past due rates, and what's the follow-up? Again, two questions. Do we follow up after that in a short period of time? Again, I guess that's going to depend on how old the debt is.
Okay, well, I'd have to ask Mary Spester, are you referring to when a property is tax certificate
No,
is?
no, I'm just going to arrears now, Paul. I'm sorry, I switched gears.
Not a
Yeah, I switched.
problem. We have a process to notify the public as to when they're have missed their payments, in the sense that there's 2 tax bills that go out a year with 4 different payment dates, and that notifies anything that might be left over from the previous tax billing. But we also send out a notification in between that would let people know that they've missed a payment. Sometimes it's just an innocent mistake and people are happy to know about it. And then other times they just get ignored and going forward.
And I've been in the office lots of times, must be just after those notices go out, and people will say, I'm sure that I've paid that, but after looking at it. So it is something that's good.
There is communication that goes out to staff to the individuals.
Yeah, no, I've heard it going by standing in the office there. So then do we call people, and are we proactive? Again, I'm talking about arrears, not tax sales. So someone is, say, 1 year behind or 2 payments behind or whatever. Do we reach out and offer to help them figure out a payment schedule?
If they contact us back to let us know that they've had some tight times, then we would do a schedule. We would offer some assistance, because I know that there's a lot of varying circumstances for why people miss their tax bill payments. And there's a lot of people that just have some hard times. I've had a lot of success in the past with working out a finance agreement. And again, it's a formalized finance agreement that we get them to sign. Because I just find that people end up honoring that more when they've actually signed the agreement. And we work out a schedule of something that helps them, but also make sure that they catch up within a reasonable time period.
How often do the banks check in on secured properties to see if they're in default or behind the top? And because commercial properties, in a lot of instances, or even by something that's secured for a line of credit, that's a mortgage on a house, they're not necessarily making payments toward that are included as a tax payment. How often do the banks check in to see what, and I suppose it's maybe all different times, but do they check in often to see what arrears are like?
Well, Madam Mayor, the reality is it really depends on the bank and what their processes are internally. I haven't seen a lot of banks check in on a regular basis. However, when a property is registered for a tax certificate, any interested properties are notified and have a formal letter that's couriered out. And once those banks are notified, depending on the circumstances, a lot of times they'll jump in and pay the tax bill, and then just put that on their billing for their clients. It's been I've had in the past, in my years of experience, I've had a lot of success with people either going remortgaging and having the outstanding taxes put into their mortgage, which just increases their monthly or biweekly payments a little bit, or by the bank just stepping in, paying it, and then charging it back to the clients over a 5-year period.
I'm sorry, I just have a few more, but I just want to make sure that we're getting this information out to the public. So how do people find out about tax sales? Do we advertise them? Do we have a section on our website directing people where to find this information?
Yes, Madam Mayor, they go into the paper, the local paper. They are on our website, and there are websites like ontariotaxsale.ca where they can be listed, and then people can go on and find out which properties are listed in tax sale right across Ontario.
Okay. And when a tax sale is in the works, are they advertised by roll number and legal description? Is that the only way that they're advertised? Is the owner or the corporation, are they advertised along with it if you go on Tax Alert or Ontario Tax Sales?
No, the information as to the owner is always kept private, both here at the office, but also in the tax sale process. When the advertisement goes out to the paper or to ontariotaxsale.ca or on our website, yes, it's by roll number and address, but it doesn't list the personal information.
Okay, so just 3 more, and then I'll get to the end of this as to what I'd like to see done. Can anyone walk in and plunk down their number of dollars and ask for a tax certificate on the property? Or do they have to have an interest on the property, for example, a mortgage holder? Can anyone walk in off the street with an address and ask for a tax certificate on a property if they put the money down?
In this situation, Madam Mayor, the legislation dictates that the requirements are that anybody can get the information. They have to pay whatever fee has been passed in the fees and charges bylaw of the particular town, municipality, or township, but that anybody can order that tax certificate. But again, it lists the role and the amount that's outstanding, but not the private information as the owner.
Yeah. Can any council member get access to tax arrears just by walking up to the tax clerk and asking?
As long as they have the fee.
That's right. And so my other question was just how does COVID-19, and we know what that is. So are there any other comments or questions of council after I've asked all those questions? And there's a purpose to this. So a suggestion, and I can make the motion myself. I would like to make a suggestion that we, matter of fact, I'm just going to make the motion. So Deputy Mayor, you will be in the chair just for the time being, please. I move that within 3 months of lifting the declaration of emergency, that a full report of current and potential tax sales, values, amounts owing, and status for sale, vesting, etc., be brought forward, and from there that it should become a recurring report the second meeting of each month, or the only meeting, if that should be the case, until the end of this term.
I have a mover. Can I have a seconder?
We help. Can you see the hands?
No, actually. Oh, there. I'll take McCormick.
Okay. So you'll have to call the
Any
question.
further? Yeah. Any further discussion? Dave, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. My only concern regarding the motion would be if it's coming through to regular council, and then that is are you wishing to have that publicly known at the time before it's even out for tax sale? If it's a list of arrears, if it's in during normal council, then everybody will be able to see the roll number and address.
No, I'm not. I didn't ask for that kind of detail. I asked for a full report. I guess maybe by full, that's what you were assuming.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for potential collections and so on. So I'm not asking for names, places, dates, properties, or anything else. I'm just it's a progress report that I want to be fairly succinct on, so that we are getting the information as to years, perhaps even values, and sometimes even whether some of them, without giving the properties away, without giving the roll numbers and so on away, just where they sit. We have to start somewhere. It was a mandate.
So can I, for clarification, Your Worship, are you asking for property counts like we saw in the report tonight? Just a property count, tax arrears, and the years out?
Full report.
General like that?
Yeah, I could take it that way. A full report of current and potential tax sales. I don't want it so watered down that we're not seeing what's going on, though, too.
No, I know. I just want to make sure we're providing the adequate direction for the treasurer here to get the right information.
Yeah, I agree. And I think after the first report comes back, that we'll have an idea whether we're comfortable with it. And I also have faith in our treasurer that he's not going to bring out stuff that is going to put us in bad stead with the residents and ratepayers of our area. But we have to start somewhere.
McCormick, are you okay with that clarification?
Yes, I
Yeah.
am.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. I make 5, 6. Unanimous. Carried. Thank you.
And thank you, Paul, for such a good start on this. That was a good report. And thanks as well to council for putting up with that. I know that it was on all our radars to try and get something moving on this. So now's the time. Okay, 4.6. So I have the chair back again.
Your worship.
Yes.
I'd make a motion to receive the information for the tax sale update report.
Okay, thank you. Susan, is that what you were wanting? Thank you. A seconder for Deputy Mayor Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. I didn't see Susan pop up there. Thank you. Now we'll move on to 4.6, Infrastructure Services, Part 8, On-Site Sewage System Program. We got Todd, or who's speaking to this?
Your worship, Peter, I'm online here. I can speak to this.
Yeah, no. So that's, how do you want to approach this, Peter? Do you want to speak to it first, or do you want council to question you on it first?
Your worship, due to the length of the report, it's quite long. I'd like to just, if I could, just take a couple of minutes to brief council on the Coles notes of the report.
Certainly.
And then turn it over to council for questions, if that works.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'll start. First of all, I'll apologize for the length of the report. Staff don't typically write reports that lengthy, but we thought it was necessary to provide a lot of background information to council that was reviewed by staff prior to making the recommendation. The staff are simply looking for a motion to receive this evening, and then we're recommending that a council decision be made on the July 21st meeting. So I know there's lots of information here, so I'll jump right into some of the key kind of the key notes of the report. So just so everybody has an idea of what's happening around us, all lower tier municipalities within LNA are bringing this service in-house. And then some municipalities like Loyal's Township are hiring an additional staff member to deal with the additional workload. So it really depends on their organizational structure and what they can accommodate. The staff recommendation, the approach is very sustainable. There's no adverse impacts to user rates and taxation. That's not often easily done with the business case reports that propose bringing on an additional staff member. It requires no additional fleet or equipment to be purchased. The environmental programs provide an opportunity for significant capital savings, as well as launching like a risk-based resource management approach. The recommended solution is basically paid for by permanent fee structures that already exist. Developers are already used to it, and it's a fee structure that's consistent across the region. There will be significant improvements to the development process. And in my opinion, it really completes the one-stop shop. So, back in 2012, council decided to create infrastructure services to try to streamline development. And this takes it up a notch and kind of completes that circle. So, and last but not least, one of the key takeaways in this report, it provides the recommended option provides council with the highest level of control possible. So I'll just do a couple quick summaries on a couple of quick points. I just wanted to paint a clear picture on the provision of Part 8 services, what it really is. People are familiar with permits and approvals, but it's a whole lot more than that. So along with the so when I say Part 8, it's we're referring to the common septic systems and rule systems. So on top of permit issuance, approvals, inspections, There's also a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes for reviews, for severances, minor variances, garage, pools, sheds, that type of things. They're all common functions that are performed under this service. So, and this service, I think council's aware, in one of the attachments, there was the letter that was provided by Public Health. So they've been providing this service to the municipalities prior to 1988. And are only going to be continuing until the end of this year. So our hand is being pushed per se to implement a different solution to this. So staff were tasked with to try to bring a report back to council to show all the options. So we wanted to identify and evaluate all available options for delivery of the Part 8 services with an objective to really improve customer service through council control, improve that one-stop shop. We wanted to, where possible, try to consolidate the number of regulatory agencies developers would have to use. A secondary goal was to introduce an option that would improve environmental protection through proactive programs and educational outreach that would give us the opportunity to provide those large-scale capital savings. And when I say that, I'm referring to some of those environmental programs can prevent the premature capital upgrades of, say, treatment facilities, whether it be water or wastewater, based on the programs that have been able to save capacity. So basically, the staff recommendation is building on that 2020 vision that council had to create that streamlined development approach. So this recommendation, we're proposing to use the same fee structure that's currently out there by KFLA Public Health, but we're proposing the one additional staff so we can launch those proactive environmental programs and actually take us up to that more sustainable future. So if we move forward in just a very simple base model with looking at our permits and fees, we're estimating that we're at least 70%. This new position would be at least funded by 70%, and we could be looking at full cost recovery or even possible positive revenue streams as early as year 2, depending on what council's wishes are. When we look at things like the septic reinspection programs or any of the other types there are certain environmental programs that have revenue generating to them, and then some of them are preventing large scale capital upgrades, so that you get the huge capital savings. So short term, there's the fee structure is there to support this. Any small fees at the very onset of this program, say perhaps tail end of 2020 or beginning of 2021, staff are proposing to fund this through the user rate system through utilities, because it's almost all these programs, environmental programs, are all utilities based. They're all things that we wanted to do, that we just don't have the human resources to get them going, to get them launched. So we're excited that this is the opportunity that we can actually take that next step. When I say that any of that burden, any of the financial burden from adding a staff member, how it can be what can't be funded through permits fees, how it could be incorporated in the utilities budget. I'll give you an example. We've had some environmental programs in the past where we use consulting firms to do like an inflow and infiltration study. So those types of things, were incorporated into a budget as an expenditure, where those things would no longer exist. All that stuff will be developed in-house and move forward. So what did staff do? We evaluated a total of 7 options. We came up with key performance indicators. We wanted to look at, what is cost effective, what's a cost effective approach, what's a good service level control, council control over rates and fees, enhanced customer service, ease of payroll burden, enhanced environmental programs. Things like that is what we're looking to evaluate all those options on. Bringing this service in-house and hiring 1 additional staff ranked the highest. So it scored 19 out of a possible 21 points on the staff review. So I'm sure one of the biggest questions probably racing through everybody's mind, you see that potential revenue. Why can't this be done without having any additional staff hired? Can we just bring this in, get that revenue, and do it with our existing staff? I'll give you just a quick snapshot on development services. So based upon our 5-year averages for construction, and then when we look at workload comparisons to neighboring municipalities and future development forecasts, the full complement of 3 building officials is what is required just to meet our provincially mandated timelines, developer schedules, and a reasonable expectation for level of service. This full complement of inspectors, and we're not there yet. That was something that was addressed at the previous council meeting. When we're there, that's where we're going to see increased clearance rates for our property standards. Those types of things are going to start to improve. And to put it in perspective, the Part 8 alone, providing that service, that represents about half of a full-time position. And so adding that to any department, whether it be building or utilities, would have an adverse effect. So there would be problems with the service that would be delivered. So environmental programs, this is something, you know, our utilities director could give. He has a wealth of knowledge in a lot of this stuff. These programs are worth the effort. You get out of them what you put into them. The staff recommendation provides that avenue where we can actually launch those things. You know, stuff like the water conservation, the I&I program, all that stuff can, and some of those things are like the water conservation, they're recommended by the Walkerton Inquiry. So there's things that are their recommendations that we're not actively doing yet. So, you know, many municipalities have at least one staff or several staff that actually just work on environmental programs alone. So we're proposing that hybrid approach to launch this and to get it going. So that's kind of the background on that. So I'll turn it over if there's any questions from council.
Yeah, Councillor Richard, I just want to hold on a sec. Have we lost Councillor McCormack?
No, I'm back now.
Okay, all right. You disappeared on my screen there for a minute, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, Terry. Please.
Thank you, Worship, and I apologize if it's a little bit, if I feel like I'm bouncing around here, but I was trying to keep notes as I was reading through the report, so it'll bounce around a little bit. The position you're talking about creating, Peter, it's a manager's position, is it not? That answers directly to the director?
Through your worship, so that's yet to be determined. So that's something that would be done through a comprehensive organizational review by the CAO. So I'm not sure where that would quite fit in the organizational chart yet. I don't want to be preemptive on that one and say where that one would lie, but we are recommending that position report directly to the utilities director, though. It's an environmental based program.
Okay, yeah, and that's why I asked. I just assumed that any position that answers directly to a director is probably going to be a management position, but we don't know what that is yet because it's going to affect the organizational chart or the organizational structure, I'm assuming, right?
Through your worship, correct. Yeah, so we're proposing that one additional staff. So yeah, it would be a change to the organizational chart.
Okay, the re-inspections. So we're not talking about doing the re-inspections right away, or are we? Is that part of the plan that going forward and hiring a full-time position with a 0.44 job, are we talking about doing the re-inspections right off the hop January 1st, 2021? Or is that something that's going to be discussed or something for down the future?
Through your worship, so re-inspection is a very valuable service. So we're not proposing that right now. So before we would want to jump into that with 2 feet, we'd want to, assuming that we go down this road, we want to put a comprehensive report in front of council so they can see all the pros and cons to it. And, and stuff like that would probably be useful if we had some public education, some open houses, that type of thing on that. And then if we do go down that way, the things that we see that other communities are doing is more of a risk-based approach. So they're doing properties that are more, that front on water, that are in high density rural areas, that type of stuff. So yeah, we're recommending to give you lots of information on that at a later date. That's one of the possibilities where this could actually be into a positive revenue generating position.
Okay, and that's why the revenue generator, we're at 70%, not the 100% as far as paying for the position that you want to hire. Have we, or should we, have we touched base with our insurance provider with respect to any increased liabilities that we may get by doing these inspections? I know with KLFLA, we have absolutely virtually no risk with respect to liability because it was their ball game by us doing them. What does that do? How does that deal with the risk with respect to the septic systems?
Through your worship, when we look at the risk of that and we compare it to the risk for, say, development services for building inspections, in my opinion, they're not even comparable. The environmental risk, if it's managed in a diligent way, you know, so I'll give an example. You know, we'd want to staff verification on benchmarks for elevations of tile beds and stuff like that. That's something that we're not going to take, you know, as being provided to us by a contractor or something like that. So we put the appropriate checks and balances in. So when you look at the amount of risk, it's almost negligible when you compare that to an actual full building.
Okay. I'm guessing how many did, and you may not be able to answer this question, that's fine, but how many septic inspectors does KFLA, or did they have, to cover the complete KFL area?
Through your worship, I'm not aware of how many inspectors they had. Early in the report, I referenced how the data that I was provided came from KFLA with respect, so we could quantify what was a full-time equivalency. So when I say it's 0.5 of a full-time job, that was data that was provided from KFLA to us to do the analysis on. So I'm not sure. I know their inspectors had multiple duties, so they didn't just do that. So they had off-season work that they would do as well.
Okay, so okay, no, that's great. I noticed that one of the options is to have this the inspections contracted out. Are there, and there was a company that was mentioned, but it wasn't actually a septic inspection company. Are there contractors out there that can provide this service at a fee, you know, a cost or a fee per service type of deal? And have we contacted them to see if they can provide any kind of septic inspections for us?
Through your worship, we've had no direct conversations with these consultants. They do exist. I know there are regions that they do contract the reinspection programs out. So they are out there, but they, you know, they're for profit basis, right? So that's one of the downsides to it. When you do anything that doesn't have full council control over, there's going to be challenges. You know, there'll be challenges with how to manage it. You know, so when we look at consulting firms, to be specific, one of the challenges that we have there is that there's contracts and they do what that contract says and nothing more. So it gives us, we don't have a lot of latitude to push them. Whereas when something's in-house, what council decides is the level of service. That's what's delivered.
Okay. And I noticed that the fee chart, or the fees that we're suggesting are consistent or actually identical to what the KFLA is doing. I mean, I've had opportunities.
Sorry, Councillor Richardson, we've again, I think we have lost Councillor McCormack again. Oh, we're back. John, are you okay? Are you with us?
We lose it and then it just reboots again. So I'm on and off, but I'm getting the gist of it for now.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor.
Keep going.
Okay, thank you.
You should get farther away, John. It worked good from here. Sorry. The fees that we're suggesting are consistent and actually the same as KFLA's. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rideau Valley Conservation Authority is offering up the same process. Now, their fees are substantially less, and I'm thinking of our tax base here, our taxpayers, that they're, with respect to most of the services that they provide, the fees are less. Is contracting somebody like the Conservation Authority, Rideau Valley, I think it is, that can give a bit of a break to our taxpayers, an option?
Through your worship, so there's a couple things to consider there. The proposed level of service from going through for Rideau Valley through CRCA is not quite identical to what KFLA was providing. So some of the things that Rideau Valley provide, they do it as desktop. So they may not come to the site. So anything KFLA, every service they provided to the town of Greater Napanee had a site visit attached to it. So if somebody had wanted a minor variance or they were putting up a pool or a garage, there was actually a site visit so they could confirm setbacks, all that type of stuff was done. Their approach at Rideau Valley is a little bit different. So it's not quite apples to apples there. Some of the fees, I'll just point out some of the fees, some of the differences there. There are some significant differences in the two fees, but sometimes it doesn't line up with what the service. So I'll give you an example. So on the class 2 and 3 systems, the KFL rate, LNA rate was $9.50 and CRCA was $4.10, but we don't do any of those. So our kind of our bread and butter for what the work is typically done in this municipality is on the class 4 or 5 systems. And, so we do about 50 of those a year. And the rates between KFLA and CRCA are much closer there. They're $9.50 to $8.40. So CRCA is just slightly below them then. When you look at one of the tables towards the end of the report, it actually summarizes, what would it look like if we move forward with our current rates that KFLA are charging versus the CRCA's. And you can see that based on the typical usage of services in the community today, there's the differences, the billable fees per se is going to be at KFL rates, they're going to be around the 69,000 mark. And on the CRCA, they're around the $56,000, $57,000 mark. So it's not a huge spread, but there are some differences throughout. You are correct. There's some differences throughout.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to put myself in the position of our taxpayers with respect to, the COVID thing, there's going to be increases in just about everything we do in life, from buying our groceries to paving our driveways to having our grass cut. So I'm trying to be as fiscally responsible with our taxpayers' monies as far as the services that we can provide as I can. With respect to, with respect to the provincial guidelines, all of the inspections, there's guidelines with respect to the inspections, and there's time periods that we all have to follow. So if whoever does the inspections doesn't follow those timelines, they're responsible for that, and they have to answer to the province. Am I correct with that? Or so say for a septic inspection, they have 2 weeks, 2-week timeline to do the inspection. Those inspections, no matter who does it, have to be done within those 2 weeks. Am I correct with that?
Through your worship, so I'll maybe answer half of that, and then I'll ask Mr. Noble to jump in for part of that, perhaps. But so where I'm going with this is the provincial mandated timeline. So one of the feedback that staff received the most about KNFL delivering the service, they provided a great, valuable service for a long period of time. But some of the complaints that were really surfacing in the last 2 to 3 years is when a contractor wanted to do a test pit and have that initial that advice coming from public health, they weren't getting it in a timely fashion. So they were getting the level of service. So I'm sure if you poll a lot of our developers in the community and you ask what was the level of service currently, they'll say there's opportunities for improvement. So that's one of the things. As far as cost, most of the developers, we've never heard any negative complaints about cost, and we've actually heard where they would pay more if we would jump and run and make sure that we're meeting all their tight development schedules, because it's quite often they're aggressive, and if we don't meet them, it really causes them delays and extra costs. So that's one of the advantages of coming in-house. And then if you want more follow-up on, say, provincially mandated timelines, and Michael could jump in if you had something really specific you wanted to ask on that one, you could help out.
Yeah, no, it's just specific with the timelines is that there are provincially mandated timelines that have to be followed no matter who does it. So maybe if we do it in the house, instead of having the 2-week time period for something, we might be able to get it done in a week as opposed to the 2 weeks. I think that's what you're sort of suggesting, and we can provide a better quality that will cost more, but we can provide a better quality. Is sort of what I'm getting from it.
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah, it's a level of service thing. That's really what we were trying to target there. We're proposing to continue with those KNFL rates for 2021. Just transfer them over and start, and then do a financial review in the third quarter of 2021, and then review from there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And with respect to our neighbors, it sounds like our so Stone Mills, do they have somebody that does septic inspections on their own? Loyalist Township, I'm guessing, was dealt with by KFLA. Are they? I think at one point you might have suggested that they're going to hire in somebody else as well at Loyalist. I kind of like a bit of the regional approach to it, in the fact that if we've got a half a position and Loyalist has a half a position and Stone Mills has a quarter of a position, rather than each of us hiring somebody, it would make sense to get the same product by hiring one person that's going to service all three areas. And I guess that's kind of what you're suggesting, in the fact that if we hire somebody, that we had the ability to and I hate to say the word, but farm them out, say, to Stone Mills to do inspections in Stone Mills. Is that sort of the idea?
Through your worship, correct. So we have an existing joint services agreement for building inspection services. Stone Mills helped us out in a time of need when we were very shorthanded. That was very much appreciated. We'd like to amend that agreement so that we can have that reciprocal working relationship with the Part 8 services as well, because right now currently they only have one building official. If he can't keep up, they would like that opportunity to lean on us, and it'd be a revenue generator for us.
Okay, and I guess the ultimate goal is just to become a cost recovery to get back to zero, I guess, ultimately, right? So I guess my concern is if we hire a full-time person at a manager's level, so we're looking at, and I have no idea what a manager would make, but I'm guessing somewhere in probably the area of $70,000 or $80,000, I don't know, that in order to get there for the cost recovery, so and then of course we've got pensions, we've got benefits and all that kind of stuff. In order to get there, we've got to work fairly hard just to get back to zero, I'm guessing anyway. So I'll leave it at that. I know I've taken up far more of your time, and there's probably other questions from the other councillors. So
no, they're all good questions, Councillor Richardson. Any further questions, Councillor Johnson? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Peter, thank you for responding to my emails earlier in the week already with some of the questions that I did have. One of the comments that I wanted to make, first of all, I appreciate the fact that you laid out a lot of different options for us to choose from. And at the Quinte Conservation Board meeting last week, so this is also public information, they were on the table was a discussion about the services that they can offer. And just as Councillor Richardson said, these services will be based in the Rideau area, and there was no indication that there would be a local representative. And I love what our conservation authorities do for us, but I don't know if they would have anybody physically in this area to do the work, and if that wouldn't just delay the process entirely. One of the other things I wanted to ask about, simply because I've had friends who suffered on the back side of this, is can you talk a little bit about the programs such as the backwash or the backflow prevention, and how this would benefit both the community and our residents?
Through your worship, on that one, what I'd like to do is turn that one over to our utilities director, and he can provide some information on that one.
Through your worship, backflow prevention would be considered more along the lines of risk mitigation. So risk-wise, anything that can exceed the pressure of our distribution system could potentially push contaminants back in our system. So we're looking at potential health consequences most significantly, and at the very least compliance issues with our drinking water license and permit. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Councillor. Is there more detail you you'd like
No,
to hear?
that's fine. It's just, I know people who have suffered during flooding and ended up with sewage in their basements, not just clean water. And this was for more than one person, the cause. So I was thinking, are you looking at doing a program, like an education program, to make sure that homeowners are aware of this, or sort of an inspection that you could do to make sure that it's working properly? That's just what I'm thinking of.
My apologies, I misunderstood your question. I was looking more at backflow into our drinking water system rather than backflow from our sewage system into homes, which is also a concern in times of flooding. I understand your question now. And that would be something
And I didn't realize it could go both ways. So my apologies as well.
we could, through your worship, we could promote backwater valves, is what they call them, definitely in new development to prevent that from occurring.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Yeah, Councillor Pennell?
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I'm not sure if this question would go to Peter or Todd, but when reading through the report and your analysis and your scoring system, basically it just comes down between option 6 of hiring somebody or doing it in-house. But could you please just tell us a little bit more about the enhanced environmental programs, of what that score of 3 could add for us, just for clarification for people that are listening, and also myself, of how I believe this is just simply added bonus if we had somebody in, and I think that what you were saying was to try to recoup that half a position to a full position. But could you just clarify that for us, please?
Sure. Through your worship, the example programs that were given in the report would fall under 3 categories. One is risk mitigation, as I just kind of addressed with backflow cross connection. The sewer use bylaw would also fall into that category. The capital deferral in terms of inflow and infiltration into our wastewater system, leak detection programs, water loss studies, and conservation would all fall into capital deferral. We're conserving capacity in our major systems and potentially deferring major capital upgrades, potentially a number of years. Revenue streams that could be seen in the future would be through the sewer use bylaw, through surcharge programs for identifying businesses that are discharging overstrength waste, for example, or looking at our fees for hauled waste. Those are some of the benefits that we could see. I think what we want to do is look at, investigate all of those things, in addition to waste diversion programs on the municipal solid waste side, and look at what we would get most bang for the buck from, and concentrate on those programs. If we looked at all of those programs together, that half a person just wouldn't cut it. So it's a matter of inventorying all of these potential programs and concentrating on priority areas where we'll see most benefit.
Just a follow-up on that. I thank you very much for that answer. There seems to be a huge benefit to the community if we were to go with option number 6, just with what you just said right there alone. I thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Okay, Deputy Mayor Kaiser?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm reading back and forth through the report, and yes, it was a long report, but it was actually a very good and very fulsome report, and I appreciate that despite it being the length of it. On page 5, under recommended approach, I think that really says it all for me, because it provides council with full control over service levels, rates, fees, customer service response times. It also facilitates a true one-stop shop and provides the opportunity for environmental programs, et cetera, in the future. As a person who builds a house every 20 years or so, the idea of getting it all in one stop is a great benefit. And when I went through this process 2 years ago, having to jump over to the public health building back and forth, chasing paper, asking people to forward on my behalf because it wasn't automatic. Having it all in one house makes so much sense for enhancement whether you're a full-time contractor is doing it all the time, it adds that level of efficiency to what they're doing too. But at the end of the day, if we're looking at covering the salary of a full-time person at 70% on permits and fees alone and taking out contracted works for other programs, and it seems to me this, like as is pointed out in this report, it's almost a no cost option to go to option 6 because we will gain so much. And it's actually there's a lot of benefits to this process and still a no cost option. Man, that's covering it all. Due diligence, risk mitigation, everything. I think this is a no brainer to go with option 6. That's all I wanted to say.
Any further comments or questions? Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. With regards to a lot of discussion in environmental areas about the future of septic system inspections coming forward, and I know that has not yet played into your fee scheduling, but what about the people who are living in waterfront property who the conservation authorities have now deemed that part of their property is in a flood zone? Does that become the responsibility of your Part 8 inspections to ensure that people who have had their floodplain boundaries adjusted, do they need to move their septic systems?
Through your worship, we would have to do further investigation into that one. So one of the things maybe I'd like to emphasize on the reinspection programs is we would like to bring that report back at a later date with a lot of detail in it. We'd like to do it in a collaborative approach too. So, you know, like we look at the PECUNIARY Remedial Action Plan, they do already have existing programs out there for some potential funding for septic tank pump outs and stuff like that. So we'd like to work with other agencies on that, and but we'd like to be the ringleader for it. We want to be the quarterback to actually drive the process and be the face that the community sees more often. As much as developers don't like it when they come into us and we have to kick them back to public health and they have to come back with their permit prior to they can do anything building. We don't like it either. We want to try to handle as much as the needs for the community as we possibly can. So that type of stuff, we'd have to look into it further. And then I'd see us as the leader on that as far as moving forward and making sure that communication flows to the homeowner very quickly.
Anything for Councillor Johnson?
Just one more question. The recommendation is your recommendation is to look at option 6 as a standalone of additional staff to be brought forward to the July 21st council meeting. Do you have a timeline that if that was what was put forward tonight, what would be your timeline for looking to put somebody into the position? What would be your real best scenario, ideal hire date?
Through your worship, because KFLA is done effectively January 1st, I'd like to have somebody in a little bit ahead of that so that it's seamless transition. One of the things that we have to do is that we have to coordinate, we have to get all the records from KFL Public Health. So there's a little bit of lead up work that needs to be done. So, if I had my preference, maybe around that October range, somewhere around there, it'd be nice to have somebody in place. So that we hit the ground running. We want it to be seamless for the developers and the homeowners. That's why I'm proposing that any of those little small things we can look at incorporating into the utilities budget.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? You have a recommendation before you that we received for information, and further the council approved the staff recommendation of option number 6, standalone with 1 additional staff that would come forward to the July 21st meeting, and further the council authorizes staff to draft all necessary bylaws are required to assume the responsibility for Part 8 services, and further, the council authorizes staff to draft an appointment bylaw for sewage system inspectors with the same powers and duties in relation to sewage system as chief building officials have in respect to buildings. Again, for the July 21st, 2020 council meeting, and further that council authorizes staff to draft a 2021 rates and fees bylaw for the provision of Part 8 services based upon Schedule A from the 2020 KFLNA Public Health Bylaw number 7, again for the July 21st, 2020 meeting. And further, that council authorizes staff to amend the existing joint services agreement with the Township of Stone Mills to include the mutual provision of Part 8 services on an on-call fee recovery basis. And further, that council authorizes the CAO to initiate a recruitment program for one full-time position that would include Part 8 responsibilities under the Ontario Building Code, as well as environmental program development, education, and outreach. All of that for the July 1st. Do I have a mover? Councillor Pennell. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Kaiser. Have we lost John again? Sorry, let's just see if Councillor McCormack, are you still with us?
I'm back.
Okay.
I can tell you when I look across at Dorland where I know John is sitting, there's a rainbow that's landing right on the fire hall from my angle. So John, you're in a pot of gold right now.
Okay. So did I get a mover? Did I get a mover and a seconder? Move and a seconder. Councillor Deputy Mayor Kaiser. Any further comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Richardson.
No, thank you, Your Worship. I was waiting for you to ask me for any further comments. So I guess my concern is I know that we're just receiving this tonight, but it sounds to me as though we're directing staff in a direction that we're not just receiving it. We've made a decision with everything that follows, all the and furthers and furthers and furthers. It's not simply just receiving, I don't believe. I think we're actually directing them, and we've made a decision. And that's my concern with this. I have no problem receiving a report. I have no problem. I mean, me personally, I would like to hear some further information with respect to private contractors, but I'm a little reluctant to suggest that we're just receiving this because it sounds like we've made the decision and we're going to rubber stamp it on the July meeting. Sorry.
And that's exactly why I read the whole motion, because we are not just receiving it. We are doing everything else with the and furthers and the and furthers and the and furthers, right up to council authorizes the CAO to initiate a recruitment program. I see that our CAO has popped up on the screen. So Mr. Cowrie, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. And I just want to make some clarifications. I think the intention of staff this evening was for council to have this report in front of them and to have them receive the report, and that the other recommendations beyond all the and furthers would come back before the full motion would come back before council on July 21st, so that they had an opportunity to receive the information. And then on July 21st, make a decision. We weren't looking to try and tie council's hands at all this evening. It was simply to put it on the table, give you lots of time to consider it, and then bring it back for a direction on the 21st of July, if that helps.
Okay, everybody understand what we're voting on then?
It does help for me, Your Worship. Like I say, when I read, my understanding was we're simply going to receive this report. And then when I read the staff report with all the and furthers, we're not just receiving it, we're directing staff in a very, very specific direction to, if that was the case, we're voting on option 6 tonight. And I'm not prepared to do that. That's my opinion anyway.
Madam Mayor, may I just clarify?
Sorry.
Through the mayor to the rest of council, I think the intention was from staff to just pass tonight the first portion of that recommendation. So it was just the receiving portion, and the and furthers would come back, would come back before council on the 21st of July.
Which is why
I apologize if I wasn't clear in my first clarification point. It was the first paragraph or the first part of the resolution to be passed this evening, and the rest to come back on the 21st. Does that help?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I appreciate that, Mr. Cowler, very much. Is it possible we can just take all the and furthers out then and just receive the report? We know that they're going to come back on the 23rd of July, but can we just remove all those and furthers and just simply receive this report?
We've got a mover and a seconder for this. So if there's going to be any change to it, you're going to have to ask for a friendly amendment, which then everyone will get a chance to speak to. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will gladly amend my motion that council receives the Information Infrastructure Services Development Service Part 8 on-site sewage system program report. That is dated June 23rd, 2020. And that, all the rest of it's gone.
I concur.
Yeah, then the seconder is good with that. I just want to make sure on staff's part that do you need any more authorization to go through to prepare any of these things through by way of motion to prepare any of these things for July 21st? I was of the same intention that we were not hiring anybody tonight, that we were not authorizing anything except for reports to come forward. That's why I don't see why it needs to be changed, but if that's council's wishes, then that'll be council's wishes. Am I right in here, Mr. Cowrie, and have we got enough direction for staff, Peter and Ray, to go through with this?
For this evening, Madam Mayor and members of council, if we have just council received the report as the current motion has been amended to, background information can still continue to be done. And some of the questions that were brought up this evening by council can be researched further, and then the entire report can be amended and brought back on the 21st with appropriate recommendations.
I just didn't want it to linger on past July 21st, that's all. Okay, so you have a motion. All in favor of the amended motion, which is just to receive, but that motion will still allow them to go ahead and get preparation for us to get more information on the 21st to make a decision. All in favor of that motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? Yeah, with 1 opposed. Okay. Motion is carried. 4.7, bylaw number 2020-0035 is our fees for services and the public comments. Would council, who is speaking to this? Because I know it sort of goes with every department. What staff member are we going to on this if we have questions? Susan, good, thank you. Council, you do have before you the comments on page 96 of your agenda. And you have hopefully all had a chance to look at, do a little research on the fees that are being put before you to pass, which was deferred from March of 2020. Council's comments or wishes? Councillor McCormack.
Your worship, the one that I have concern about is number 5, the last item, and it's where we're going to charge, we're suggesting a charge of $5 per load at the waste sites for recycling. And I think that $5 is going to cause issues. I think people will end up just taking the risk and putting them in the garbage. I would like to see a $2 fee. This was no charge prior, where you take your recycling, and if it was strictly recycling, to go to $5, I think it's going to bite us. I'd like to recommend that we change to $2.
Or just to speak to that, that's the next bylaw.
I was going to say, I think that that's the waste management one, bylaw number 14. So this is just the fees for service that we've got in front of us right now.
I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. Any comments or questions on this? Really?
Are we making comments on the comments at all?
You can make comments on the comments, but we need to get the bylaw passed if that's council's wishes. Is that
Yeah, if I may continue, having read through, sorry, I'm just loading up the bylaw in front of me on the other screen. Having read through the increases, the only one that really concerned me at all, and it doesn't really concern me, was the appearance of the large rise in the market vendor fee. But there's a big difference in the, the market vendor fee was going up a pretty big rise from last year to this year, but this year's market season has been severely curtailed. So I don't know what the impact is on the $250 per season, given that the season's so much shorter than it was intended to be. If it was as it was intended to be and COVID hadn't happened, it was appropriate and correct. But I think for the amount of market opportunity, are we adjusting that for the seasonality due to COVID?
Mr. Zetterberg, did you wish to speak to that, please? I think that's what I've got on here.
How did that happen? There we go. Just through your worship, the fee is based at, so the rate hasn't changed from last year. It's $15 a day. But something that has changed, that there is an incentive for vendors. If they commit to the full season, they do get some of their fees back. So it's actually, the whole thing actually ends up being a better deal at the end of the season. Right now we have 10 that have committed for the entire season, which means that the majority, we're expecting the majority will get most of the $250 back. And that's an incentive to stay.
Well, may I re-ask for clarification? The $250 for a season, have we adjusted that at all, given the fact that we've lost the first couple of weeks, or it's not quite the full season, correct?
No. But what we could do, if what you're asking, can we actually base it on $15 per day, whatever days are left in the season? We could adjust it to that.
Because again, if there's a spike and a pullback into phase one, we may see the markets close again in August, for example, or early September. And so I think we need to be ready to be reactive to that $15 per day for the actual number of days we have market going. That was my only concern about that one.
Yes, and it's been, normal market would have started June 6th.
Right.
So it'll be a month.
4 Saturdays. We've
Okay.
lost a counselor again here. The rainbow must have hit him.
No,
Counselor,
the rainbow's gone.
I'm here.
oh, you're there. Okay, fine.
If I may continue, Your Worship.
Yes.
The only other comment I had, having read the comments that were received from the public, there was one, first of all, the one on here about roadside spraying, that's a county initiative, not municipal anyways. But I take great offense to the idea that we're dumping poison on the waterways. Noxious weeds are required to be controlled by all property owners across the county, across the province. It's provincial law. And that was the point of roadside spraying, is to control noxious weeds. Just want to make sure that was stated very clearly, because I bristle at those kind of remarks. Thank you for letting me soapbox.
Any further comments or questions on the fee schedule? Susan, if I might ask a question, we normally look at our fee schedules each and every year, and we look at what all other municipalities around us are doing and compare. And we have costs that keep climbing, so we have to make sure that we will never be revenue neutral, but we try to make sure that we are we are looking at doing everything that we can to generate revenue for our user fees, which are going to be just absolutely terrible this year. I see that still our marriage licenses are still so much cheaper. I think of course, there aren't any weddings these days either. So this is a normal thing that we usually do in March of every year. Am I right?
That's correct. Every department reviews their fees. We were able to do it in a little bit earlier this year. So we were doing it at budget time this year, and this was scheduled to come forward in March. However, with the pandemic, it was deferred until now. But each department reviews their fees, looks at their costs, and brings forward the recommendations to council, which did come forward in February of this year.
I guess, and I know that we've got to keep charging these things, and I look at, will minor hockey be able to get up and going this year? Are they going to be able to? Are people going to be able to afford the rates? I just hope that when this is all said and done, even though we have to try and meet our costs, but we also need to serve the public. If this is a tough year, I hope that we can look back at this and say, to whether they're hockey players, whether they're crunch players, whether they're figure skaters, we may have to look at being a little more lenient and a little kinder. We can't do it on our regular rentals, but on things that kids are using, and even adult fees and so on, to get people out and going after being shut down for so long. I hope that council will remain very cognizant of the fact that we need to be kind to people as well and try and do what we can. You do have a recommendation for the bylaw number 2020-0035, fees for service, which was deferred, and we have the public comments, which we have discussed. So I need a motion for first, second, and finally third reading. Okay, Deputy Mayor Kaiser, Councillor Richardson. Further comments or questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Now we have the bylaw to amend waste management bylaw number 0614 as amended, which again was deferred from 2020. Councillor McCormack, did you wish to speak to this now?
Well, just your worship, to repeat my comment, I would just like to recommend that we consider a $2 fee for recycling at the waste disposal site instead of $5.
What may I ask, Paul, what was the fee before? Was nothing?
That's correct. The fee was nothing. But during the budget process, we identified that there was a cost to operate the facilities. The proposal from staff was to shut down that service altogether, because all of the people who bring the recycling to that facility have free curbside pickup. And the compromise at that point was to then come back and charge a fee that made it revenue neutral, so that people who chose to have their recycling picked up at their roadside for free weren't subsidizing the extra costs in recycling for those who chose to take it to the waste site and have it disposed of. So I believe that at the February 20th meeting that we had was the second budget meeting, that the compromise was that recycling would still be continued or available to be dropped off, but that a full recovery would come forward at that point. This is a reflection of the budget, so that if we do change this fee, then we are altering the council approved budget.
Councillor McCormack? Anything?
Well, I remember the discussion where recycling was not going to be accepted at the disposal site anymore. And everybody does have a system in place to have their recycling picked up at no charge. I guess the South Fred dump that I'm accustomed to, people do it just out of habit. So if we're going to lose money by collecting recycling and only charging $2 versus $5, I'm not sure if we need to continue collecting it or not. So I just find that $5, if we go that route, is too high of a price, and it might end up curbing the usage, and then we might end up having a service that we're not using anyways. But just a suggestion, I think $5 is more than what people are going to pay.
And that was the, sorry, through the mayor to Councilor McCormick, that was the suggestion of staff, is to discontinue having recycling dropped off of those facilities and allow them to be picked up at no cost at the residence.
Okay.
I remember that. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just will offer I also recall the discussion having gone that we didn't want to take away the service entirely, because there are occasions where many people might find themselves with a specific event or a cleaning up or whatever that generated more than they could reasonably put at the curb on a specific week, that we should keep the service, but it should be at a revenue neutral. And that was the logic behind keeping it at all, but that it had to be revenue neutral. I don't think $5 per load is that painful. Probably costs more in gas to get there for most parts of the municipality than the $5. I support this. I think you need to keep the service, but it needs to be revenue neutral. And we also may see at a time in the not too distant future when it's producer responsibility for recycling that maybe these rates could be adjusted. But at this time, I still support this.
Any further comments? So are you looking to make a motion, Councillor McCormick, to adjust this bylaw? And if that's it, Susan, does the bylaw have to go back and come back to us again as adjusted? Or can we adjust it on the fly?
Council can amend it if they wish.
And I guess I shouldn't say adjust it on the fly, because that's not really what I meant. Council's wishes here.
I'll move this bylaw.
Okay, for second and third reading, moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Further comments or questions? All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion is carried. Thank you. You have a report for the special session of council, which will be held July 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. And the staff recommendation that council authorize a special session to be held on Tuesday, July 21st at 6 to address public meetings under the Planning Act and any time sensitive matters. Normally we would not have a meeting in July, but I'm sure that there will be time sensitive matters and many other matters that will need to be dealt with by then. Council's wishes. I need a motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Pennell. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. 4.10, statements by members. Do we have any statements by members? Yep, Councillor Richardson. And then I'll go to you, Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Worship. I know I brought this up maybe a couple meetings ago, but it's got to do with the delegation of authority. What I would like to see happen is maybe if we don't do it tonight, put it over to the 21st of July. I really don't think we need the delegation of authority anymore. We have the ability to have meetings. We have the ability to have closed meetings. We have the ability to have special meetings. And I think moving forward, this may be the first step that we need to move forward even more. So what I'd like to do is whether I do it by motion tonight or by notice the motion for the 21st of July, but to have the bylaw to rescind the delegation of authority.
Okay, so you want to do that by way of motion or by notice of motion, the difference being a motion would be discussed tonight and notice of motion could not be discussed until the next meeting?
I'm good either way. I know it probably is going to depend on how Susan wants to deal with it. So I'm good either way. I'll deal with it tonight, or I can deal with it on the 21st. It makes no difference to me.
You still have the floor, Council. Oh, sorry. Susan, did you wish to make any comment on that?
No, it can be done by resolution tonight, or a notice of motion can be discussed tonight if there's 2/3 majority of council that agree.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So do you have a motion, Councillor Richardson?
I'll make the motion tonight if you wish, Your Worship. I mean, or I can do it. I'll make the motion tonight. Let's make the motion tonight if it's not a big deal for Susan. I'll make the motion tonight and see where it flies.
And your wording for the motion, please?
The motion would be to rescind the bylaw with respect to the delegation of authority. And I apologize, I don't have the date right in front of me. I have it at home, but I don't have it with me right now. But I did have a copy of the bylaw.
Of the original bylaw for the declaration?
That's correct, yeah.
So you're talking about the delegation of authority, or are you speaking of the declaration of emergency?
The delegation of authority, Your Worship, yes.
There is a difference. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Norrie? Okay, open for discussion. Yeah, Councillor Richards?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, and I'm sure that Mr. Callery may want to weigh in, but I'll just reiterate, we now have the ability, we're moving forward. I'm not sure if we're into stage 2, but I know the rest of the province is into stage 2 of this emergency. When we declared, or when we entered into the delegation of authority back in March, I believe it was, there was a lot of uncertainty with respect to how are we going to do things if we can't have a meeting? We now have the ability to have meetings. We have the ability to have closed session meetings. I really don't think that, and we're doing what we should be doing anyway. So I really think it's sort of a redundant thing at this point. So that's why I made the motion to rescind the bylaw.
Any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Norrie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we've all been educated well enough now. We can meet. We are accessible, as one of our councillors is a few hundred miles north of us and still here at a meeting. So I think it's time that we, as a council, get back to our full-time job of looking after everything and working with staff together. That's all.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Kaiser?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a problem with the idea, but I would like to ask if there's anybody who has any just reason, is there any reason why we can't? And I ask that specifically because under the provincial order, virtual meetings are permitted because we're in an emergency situation. Is there at any point in the near future or in any of the phases where we lose the ability to have full functionality under virtual meetings, or are we fully functional in every respect? I agree with what Councillor Richardson said. We're able to do these meetings, but is there anything about the provincial emergency order or anything like that, or the removal of that order that will take this away from us, that this might be premature to do this? And I don't know. We were very limited when we first went into this emergency about the ability to have virtual meetings and conduct all business, but it seems like we are able to do that. If the province removes its emergency order on July 21st or whatever, do we lose the ability to be fully functional in virtual meetings? That's my concern, and that's my only question. Is there anybody that can answer that?
I think Susan has just popped up to maybe give us some advice on the difference between the delegation of authority and the state of emergency, the declaration of emergency, which I think we all need to understand.
So with the provincial state of emergency, the Municipal Act was amended to permit council to meet electronically. When the emergency is declared over, council loses that ability to meet virtually. with the ability to have any member of council that's meeting virtually counted as quorum. So we go back, unless the province does amend the Municipal Act again, we go back to what's currently in the Act, which says that members of council or committees can meet virtually. However, the members that are meeting via electronic methods do not count as quorum and cannot participate in the meeting. So with the declaration of emergency right now, that's what gives us the power to meet virtually, to be counted as quorum, and to participate in meetings. So council can do their regular business, meet in closed session and such because of that emergency declaration.
So thank you very much for that clarification. And that is my only concern, that I don't have a problem with removing the declaration, or sorry, the delegation of authority. But if we lose this ability but are still unable to meet face to face, we may have to re-put it back in. That's my only concern about that.
So Susan, the delegation of authority, to remove the delegation of authority, and I see that Mr. Calery has come on too. What does that, what restrictions does it take away, and what restrictions can it add? And I'm sorry, Councillor Johnson, I see you had your hand up, and I'll go to either Susan or Ray first for an explanation, because I want to make sure everybody understands this.
So the bylaw that was put in place in March was, there were a lot of unknowns. At that point, we didn't know if council could even meet. So it was put in place. It's a very general bylaw. It's very generally worded. The one authority that it did give was it gave the Director of Development Services authority to move forward with consent applications instead of bringing them forward to Committee of Adjustment. So that process is being completed by staff. So it was a very general delegation of authority bylaw that was put in place and said as long as the emergency was in place that bylaw would be there. In order to rescind it, it would require a bylaw to come back to the next meeting of council, being the 21st bylaw, to rescind the delegation.
Okay, and so the consent applications would be one thing. To lift the delegation of authority, does that lift the authority of the MECG as well? Does that disband that body of government or governing that are trying to work with stuff?
No.
Does it take away any of their authority to use emergency funding for purchases? You know, we've been lucky, touch wood, but does it remove anything there?
No, it does not.
Okay, because of the state of the declaration of emergency still covers all that. So yes. What effect does it have as far as council and having to have maybe more meetings to do any governing? I guess I want to make sure that if we're doing this, that it's not going to cause us having to have more meetings, or whether it just is something that people want removed for one reason or another. Maybe they don't like the way things are going. Maybe they want to have a larger say. I'm not saying that that's a negative. I'm just saying it. So to remove the delegation of authority, I want to make sure everybody understands what that does to us. Mr. Calery, did you wish to put anything in there?
Yeah.
I just want information. I'm not trying to influence. I just want to make sure everybody understands this.
I think as the, Madam Mayor, to you and council, I think as the clerk has indicated, the original delegation of authority bylaw that was put in place at the first emergency was a very general one. It was to ensure that the normal operations of the organization could continue in case council couldn't meet. We weren't sure what legislation was going to be put in place. And since then, I think the process of council meetings has matured greatly over the period of time of the emergency. If I go back to the chart that was put forward through the MECG back to council, Councillor Richardson is correct sort of in his timing, that at level 1 eased, The delegation of authority bylaw is recommended to be looked at being partially lifted or partially removed. And the only reason why it says just partially was to come back as we move from level 1 east into the recovery, which is based really on us opening our doors for service. And we're hoping to do that as indicated in the very first part of July or early July, hopefully, if we can meet all of the mandated health and safety requirements and public health requirements. And so we were looking at bringing that forward to remove it. And that is, the timing is exactly right where we are between now and the first part of July to remove part of that. I would request to, I know, I think I'm not sure if the resolution was to try and bring forward a bylaw at our next meeting or not, but I certainly would agree that it would be an appropriate time for staff to bring forward a report. As the clerk has indicated, there are some planning matters that council may still want to leave in place. So there may be some very minor things to leave in place, but I think the bulk of it would be removed, and and council can function properly to continue on with their normal authority. But there may be some minor things that staff may want to recommend as far as keeping in place for council to consider if they felt that was appropriate at our next meeting. So I think from a timing perspective, this is about the timing it was planned to be looked at and reviewed. So I think that is consistent with our chart. And I think that there are maybe possibly some partial authorities that council may want to leave in place, but for the most part, it is getting close to time to move most of those back.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure you got that you want it lifted as of this evening, Councillor Richardson and Councillor Norton? Or are you looking at it for the July 21st meeting?
I think our clerk has said that we can make the motion and vote on it tonight, but it wouldn't happen until the July 21st. Am I correct, Susan, that you have to bring another bylaw forward? So
Yes, we would have to bring a bylaw forward to rescind it.
Yeah. No, I also don't think it's a bad idea. I think everybody gets mixed up with this delegation of authority and the provincial order that we need to keep in place just for the time being. To support the health unit, which is very important, but I think we need to get back to working as scheduled too. And I do know that there are some planning matters that through the consent applications that it would be nice if they could finish those up, and they will still be able to do those up until. Okay, so you have, I'm sorry, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering, after listening to Ray, if maybe we should hold off until the next meeting. We're going to be holding off anyway, and to see what the report of what we may wish to have still on this authority, and go from there, and then maybe take the vote from off the next meeting. We'll see what can be lifted and what staff wishes to remain a hold of. That's what my thoughts are.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate so that people listening in the audience don't confuse this with lifting the state of emergency. This is not lifting the state of emergency by any means. And certainly I feel it would be nice for us to be able to get together more often, or even in a more cohesive manner. As fabulous as Zoom meetings are, they aren't the same as face-to-face meetings. Councillor Purnell, what made me think I would like to ask Susan, can we, if we don't pass this, if we don't vote tonight, can we at the next council meeting, can we vote and pass it in the same meeting? Or will that then extend it until August?
So staff would need direction on whether to rescind the bylaw or not. So if council direction tonight was to bring forward a bylaw to the next meeting to rescind it, that's what would happen. If the resolution is deferred until the July meeting, then the bylaw to rescind would come forward in August.
So with the delegation of authority to be removed, does that have bearing on With the provincial order, the statement of emergency, the declaration of emergency still in place, to remove the delegation of authority doesn't take away our ability to meet virtually. It is the, we can still meet virtually. That's what I'm not sure that Councillor Johnson was understanding, that we can still meet virtually. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, that's my only concern, because what if somebody's away? You know, the fact that Councillor Richardson can come in from Dryden tonight has for a lot of important things, you know, makes it kind of important. Plus, we still haven't decided on where we're meeting, and let's not get into that conversation tonight. We've still got to keep going forward. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? And can you just make sure that the clerk, Councillor Richardson and Councillor Norrie, has the wording that you are happy with for your motion, please?
Yeah, Your Worship, it's pretty straightforward, and I think Susan probably got it. I'm just going to make the motion that we rescind the bylaw with respect to the delegation of authority, and obviously the bylaw will be brought forward on the 23rd of July. Obviously, in these new times that we have, if things take a drastic change, we can always rediscuss it. But I would make the motion tonight to have the bylaw, to rescind the bylaw brought forward on the 23rd of July, if that makes sense to Susan.
Yeah. 21st of July, but we
sorry, 21st of July. Yeah, sorry.
We know what you mean, and you're right, Councillor Richardson. It can always, God forbid that we need it, go back on. Councillor Norrie, you seconded that. Are you happy with that wording? Okay. All in favor of that motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, any further statements by members? Yep, Councillor Johnson, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Norrie.
Actually, I'll let Councillor Norrie speak first, if that's all right with you.
Okay, Councillor Norrie.
Feel like a big setup here.
Oh, wow.
I was going to bring up quite a bit because I had some paperwork which was distributed with BIA information, but due to the recent writ, those that don't know, our chairman resigned, so the BIA is restructuring, and I can't say much more tonight till we have a meeting, and then bring it back next month about money and direction it's heading. So everything I was going to say tonight, because papers came in late on Saturday, they couldn't be put on this meeting. So I think until the BA board has a meeting, which we're hoping next week, then I can bring more back into July. So thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor Norrie. Councillor Johnson.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank the residents of Greater Napanee. This has been a big struggle for everyone, with constantly changing rules and guidelines that change every time you turn around. And as more and more local businesses start to open, everybody has been very thankful and appreciative of our frontline service providers and the people who take care of our frontline service providers and the people who clean up after all the rest of us. But I would like just to say thank you to the people who are starting to come out of isolation and perhaps support the local businesses to the best of their abilities in whatever method they're comfortable with, and the businesses that are also supporting their staff at the different levels of work that they're able to manage. It's been a very stressful time, and some people's tempers are running a little bit short, but generally speaking, most people have been willing to accept change and have been kind. And I keep seeing comments throughout the different social medias about sometimes you just have to take a breath and be kind, and we will all get through this together. And it's just a big thank you to our community.
Thank you. Any further statements? Deputy Mayor Kaiser.
Thank you, Your Worship. On our agenda tonight, we had a bylaw to accommodate some local food served mobile eating establishments. We also had an amendment to a patio license for the Loaf and Ale. And I just want to mention those because our staff and our community and this the whole leadership of the municipality has been very flexible and open-minded about how we can accommodate these mostly eating establishments in this case, but in other businesses too, that we've been flexible. These are temporary situations to help these businesses through this summer. And I think it's a great, as Councillor Johnson just said, it's the willingness and the pulling together and everybody doing our part to be a little flexible and open-minded to help these businesses survive so that in 2021 they can thrive once more. And I just kudos to everybody who's thinking outside the box. And I know we have a little subcommittee from the MECG who's looking at the patio issue. And, you know, we got businesses like even Dead Leaf Distinguished Gentleman, you know, opening a patio. The Santorini has a patio, which is picnic tables in the parking lot. Everybody's being creative and thinking, how can I just get my business through this summer? This is sink or swim time for these restaurants, is through the summer months. And this kind of open-mindedness is going to help them a great deal, hopefully enough. And so kudos to everybody involved in that. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? I remember that it's Canada Day next week. We have, I know that Kelsey and everyone over at 12 Market has been working hard to get plans up with, I think, Tyendinaga, Deserato, and Stone Mills, if I'm not mistaken. Make sure you fly the flags on social media. Make sure you put as much out there. It's going to be a really different sort of Canada Day. And I want to echo also Deputy Mayor Kaiser's thoughts. You know, staff has been, and we all have been on call 24/7 through this thing. I keep saying, I think an earthquake or a fire would have been a little bit easier, but I probably, Chief Serson wouldn't agree with me on that. I also think when we come out of this, that part of the mandate of AMO and the provincial government should be looking to see, because I don't think this is over. And I think that this is far from probably, hopefully in my lifetime, the last pandemic, but they need to be able to adjust for these long shutdowns. Hard on people, hard on businesses, hard on government, hard on everything. So I'll certainly, I'm sure, be glad, just the same as the rest of you, to see it end. We need to have a few good things going, and within the town of Greater Napanee, they certainly are good things. All levels of government have been trying to operate in the very best way that they can. So I thank all of you for the hard work, and certainly the phone calls and so on, which don't seem to cease, but that's all part of our job. And if there is nothing further, I need a motion to go into, to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act to discuss the following matters: potential litigation and the receiving of related advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. Secondly, commercial information supplied in confidence, which if disclosed could reasonably be expected to interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of an organization. And lastly, matters relating to an identifiable individual. I need a motion to go into closed session, please. Deputy Mayor Kaiser, seconded by Councillor Richardson. All in favor of that motion? Motion is carried. So we will go offline, and then Susan will be sending a new Zoom link. Thanks very much, everyone. Good night.